Hello and good evening and welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show. It's our weekly Leeds United check-in with myself, Stephen Brown, and also by my side, as ever, it is Mr. Jason Booker. Jason, how we doing, friend?
Very well, my friend, very well. Another week in the world of Leeds United, as we say. Fan overreaction, transfers, transfers that are happening, transfers that are not happening. Another week in which we've been linked to Ryan Kent, wouldn't it?
Wait, how old is that guy? How old is Ryan Kent now? I mean, gee, like, what? Ryan Kent? Let me do a quick Google search here.
I'm sure he's about 28, 29, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know what. My Google's completely broken. Anyways, hopefully, please don't tell me he's a Summerville replacement. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, you're absolutely spot on, mate. Lots happening as always. It was probably a little bit quiet-ish over the weekend. Obviously, we had the final Germany pre-season tour game, which was another comfortable win for Leeds United. And then kind of all hell broke loose yesterday with the Summerville transfer. I think the initial reaction with Summerville links to West Ham was, well, we kind of expected it. Let's see what the fee is. And then it was quite reasonable at that point. I think people were accepting of it. He is a Premier League quality player, no doubt. And then when we got wind of the fee, that's when it all kind of went a bit cuckoo. I've got to admit, I mean, because we had a bit of chatter, didn't we, in the WhatsApp group last night, because I was like, 25 million? When you hear that figure at first, I was like, hang on, 25 million? Like, what? This is, Championship Player of the Season. Unbelievable amount of goals and assists last year. We've sold Archie Gray. Like, that put us out of this need to kind of be bullied, or, there was no sense that we had to be dictated to in terms of how much we wanted as a fee. Why 25 million? Why? And I mean, I was saying to you, wasn't I, in the WhatsApp group, I was like, for me, it's just too low. Now, 24 hours later, we've got some more information about this, add-ons and this, that, and the other. In fact, though, I mean, we've even heard that the deal's not fully done yet, because Mr. Florian Plettenberg has put that although Summerville completed his medical with West Ham, there's still no total agreement. So there's a few details that need to be clarified.
No complete agreement on the final transfer fee. That's the key point from a Leeds perspective. Forget what happens on the contract, because that will go through. That's the key point. I mean, I can't help but laugh. I always try and see things from a rationale point of view. So, as the owners of the football club, they will want to get the most money considering the circumstance and situation. It doesn't make sense for them to undervalue and sell at a loss, right? Or sell lower than the value or whatever. But yesterday, obviously, the explosion, the overreaction, once again, from the fan base, exactly the same as the Archie Gray situation, exactly the same as every deal that we ever do, even if it's Glenn Kamara, who some people are now saying is the worst signing under Daniel Farke. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just stupid. And, this situation yesterday, sure, I think most of us expected it to be 35, 40 million. But what does that actually mean? You know what I mean? Like, you can structure a 35 or 40 million pound sale over 7 years if you want to, but we wouldn't know that. And we'd be like, oh my God, that's amazing business. We've got 40 million quid over, but we wouldn't know it were over 7 years, right? But for all we know, we're getting 25 million quid up front, plus really achievable add-ons. Then it developed further, and it was, after one international appearance, we're getting 4 million. Then we're getting this, then we're getting, and pretty much everything was achievable by 1 or 2. Then it comes out today that the transfer fee's not even been agreed. So all this, it's definitely in excess of 25 million plus add-ons and fans losing their mind over it. Well, it didn't even exist. Like, it's not even a reality that we've accepted anything. So what's happened here, I think, is that we've come to an agreement with West Ham that a deal can be found. We're in the ballpark. Yeah, the two clubs are within touching distance. So go have your medical, and we'll come to terms with what the finer details are going to be on this deal. But Leeds United are not going to come out of this badly. I don't believe that at all. We all expected Summerville to leave. The closer the season comes, the more it would start to make sense that we might see him stay if nobody would be prepared to put the money in. But a club was always going to come to Summerville being the top of their list. I think, always, after the season that he had last season. And we can kind of join the dots together. The fact is he's not started a single preseason game. We've seen alternatives all the way through preseason. Every single game, there's been an alternative, and Summerville's come on later on into the game. So I'm just not losing my head over it. I've got the list to the side of me, and I'll just quickly mention a couple of names because, again, people have this over expectation of what championship players should go for. The first 4 players of championship record transfer fees were all Premier League players that got relegated to the championship. So, i.e., James Maddison, Nathan Ake, Harvey Barnes, and Lavia, right? All of them were Premier League players that got dropped down. Lavia's, I think, the outlier because it was just a ridiculous fee. Chelsea were paid over the top to beat Liverpool to the sign, and that's how I see it. 5th is Archie Gray. So that's the sale that Leeds United, under this ownership, have made this window, right? Livramento, Moussa Sissoko, James Ward-Prowse, João Pedro. The first player that was an out-and-out championship player is Ollie Watkins, who worked for 34 million euros at the time. So 28 million quid, I think it was. Well, Summerville's going to go for more than that. He's not English, and arguably, he's probably not quite shown the potential that Ollie Watkins can give you. So I just don't get it, mate. I don't get the meltdown. I just don't get it.
All right, so you make some cracking points there, Jason, to be fair to you. If you watch along, please do smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, get your comments in as well. Ryan, evening, my friend. Johnny, evening, pal. John, evening. John would love to see Morgan Whittaker. Nige, just another day in the soap opera that is LUFC. Yeah, it does feel like this. I mean, Ryan, to be fair to you, it's a bit of a point as well. I don't understand the obsession with transfer fees. Realistically, it makes no difference to a fan. Yeah, well, I mean, it's absolutely spot on. To be fair, it is absolutely true.
I think from a fan perspective, they want to make sure that we get the most so we can then spend the most. I think that's where most of it comes from, because you recognise, as a simple logic as a fan, the more you get, the more you can then spend on a better player to replace him. I think that's where most of it comes from. But I do agree with him.
Yeah, indeed. Gary, I think he wanted to go in the end. Nige, question, does Farke try and replace Summerville with another winger, or accept it could be a downgrade, so get a different player, i.e. a 10, which is obviously what we've been crying out for a while? Well, I mean, before we kind of get into kind of the ifs and buts and maybes, I mean, let's kind of reflect on Crescencio Summerville's time at Leeds United, and it's kind of been a real emergence of a player who kind of came in with that crop of players, in a kind of Victor or a crop of players that came in, and a lot didn't kind of work out. But Summerville, an absolutely huge win for Victor Orta. You've got to say, that was a masterstroke, really. We've got to say that. It gets a lot of criticism, a lot of it justifiably so, but that was unbelievable recruitment when you look at what he's delivered for the club. What was it, 1.5 million from Feyenoord? I mean, it's crazy, to be honest. And I think the thing with Summerville as well, I think there's been certain slander against his character a little bit over the years. Jesse Marsh saying he's the worst trainer he's ever had, and we've heard kind of rumours of attitude. But for me, always gave 100% and hasn't kind of kicked up a fuss, didn't kick up a fuss last year.
Yeah.
I think he should be held in very high esteem. I think he's been an incredible asset for this club. Last year was phenomenal. The level he was at was just unreal. And you could kind of start to see it last season in the Premier League. There was just that period where he was scoring a few goals and he really came to the fore. And it's going to be a huge loss, isn't it? For any team, to have that taken away from it, it's huge. It's a huge test for Farke now, because there was a reliance, some would probably say an over-reliance on Summerville to dig us out of trouble at times last season. But yeah, I mean, a great player. Do you think he's going to be a success for West Ham in the Premier League, Jason?
Yeah, I think West Ham is a perfect move for him, if I'm honest. I think it's the move before the move. I do think he'd have probably fit in and got game time at Liverpool. But I think this is a move that he can make where he will start week in, week out. I think it's a top move for him. I think he suits them in terms of a club. I think some of the players that have kind of gone through their doors over the years. He had a player similar to him when they came up from the champion. Ricardo Vazte. It kind of reminds me of him in the way that he looks, the way that he used to play, they carry the ball and all the rest of it. And I think they've had players similar to him over the years as well. I think West Ham fans all like him. I think for me, he's certainly proved me wrong. I weren't a believer of Summerville before he really made it under Jesse Marsh and he came into the side. I questioned some of the things that I'd said. I didn't really understand the clamour for people saying that he should be starting. And I think that was still right, if I'm honest. I think at the time he was very young, very raw, and we'd not seen very much of him. I think people do what they always do with young players, and they'll be like, oh, just throw him in like he should play. Like, well, have you actually ever seen him play? And most of them would say no. But I think what he gave us last season, his attitude, as you said, when everybody else was kind of doing what they wanted to do, including his best mate, by the way, and Willie Nonto, Cree was very much a case of, no, I'm the man and I'm going to be the man and I'm going to show, everybody what I can do, and I'm going to try and drag this team back to the Premier League kicking and screaming. And he did that on his own a lot of the times. We were Summerville FC at the time. I think Daniel Farker is responsible for some of that, the style of play and the way that we kind of shepherded the ball down that side rather than the other. Created that problem sometimes, and maybe some of that was down to the fact that we didn't have an out-and-out proper right-back for most of the season. We tried with Spence, we tried with Ayling, we got Roberts got injured, so maybe we just couldn't quite do that. And it's evident by the recruitment of Jayden Bogle that we want to get more out of that right-hand side. So but props to Daniel Farker with that too, because Cree Summerville had never shown that level for that level of period of time at all previously. Now, a lot would say, well, we were in the Premier League before, and the competition is higher, and he should stand out in the Championship. And I think that there's a point to that as well. I've made this argument when it comes to Brendan Aronson this season. Brendan Aronson didn't look great in the Premier League for the most part, similar to pretty much the rest of that squad. But at this level, he should stand out head and shoulders, really, and that's what Summerville's done this season. So I think. I said this to you last night when we were chatting about it. If I were a West Ham fan and I'd heard that we'd spent 35-40 million on Cree Summerville, I wouldn't be particularly happy. I'd be like, I think we can probably get more for his money with that, more established, more guaranteed, because I don't see him going for that much more than that ever. If he takes that next step, then he might. But I think the likelihood is that is probably going to be where his ceiling's at. If I were a West Ham fan and had heard that we'd spent 25 million quid on Cree Summerville Championship Player of the Season from the previous season, I'd probably be all right with it. So when you actually put yourself in the shoes and have a bit of a different perspective on it, I think the transfer fee makes sense. If I'm honest, even if what is being reported is accepted. So, but yeah, coming back to your question, mate, I think he'll do great. And goes with my well wishes. He's been great for us, and he absolutely has dealt with everything exactly how you would want a professional to deal with it. Even down to this off-season, he's been involved in a lot of the media footage. He's having fun with the lads. You can tell that he's not bringing anything down. He's getting on with things. And now it looks like it'll be the last time.
I do feel that he's underplayed, Jason. I really feel that aspect of Summerville is underplayed, because I think if his last name was Dallas or Cooper or Bamford or one of that crop, everyone would be going, oh, side before self, and look how good, I feel it's kind of underplayed with Summerville, is that aspect of it. I don't think it's fully appreciated just how kind of seamless he's been in the squad, and he's not brought a fuss and he's not kicked up problems for us. I don't think he gets enough kind of spotlight on that, really.
I agree completely. We spoke about this tentatively the other week with Kilgallen and Dan Harding. I made the point and the example that one were a Leeds lad and one weren't, and the way that they were both treated completely differently because of where they've come from or what they look like. Cree Summerville. I saw people going absolute crazy. I think it was in January, because Cree Summerville were in Amsterdam, in a big car, and I'm like, so. Like, who cares? But because he's a young lad, comes from the background that he comes from, people see that he's got a chip on his shoulder, and I think we're all guilty of that from time to time as well. It's almost subconscious, isn't it? You just you don't think to necessarily treat people like that, but you just do. People were quick to just throw the club under the bus with regards to Archie Gray, and then Archie Gray comes out last week and says, as soon as Spurs were in for me, I wanted to leave. You know what I mean? But we were all Archie would never wanted to have left, and you know what I mean, because it don't fit the narrative, doesn't it? So I agree with you completely, mate. Agree with you completely, and like I say, I hope he smashes it, and I can enjoy him. I can enjoy him in the Premier League next season, and I hope he does really, really well for West Ham.
Yeah, me too. I second that. Ryan, I always loved Summerville's confidence, which sometimes was interpreted as arrogance. He fully believed in himself, telling Bielsa he wanted to play, taking the number 10 shirt and just backing himself. I absolutely agree with that 100%. I think that's absolutely right. I think he always backed himself, and he's clearly got the talent to back that up. Nige, Summerville goes with my best wishes. After last season, he deserves to be in the Premier League.
100%.
Gary, I would have preferred Nonto to go rather than Summerville after Nonto refused to play for the club. He might be the next one to try and get a move now. I mean, it's actually going to be interesting with Nonto, isn't it? Because them two are thick as thieves, aren't they? And best pals. And I think that was always my worry last season when Nonto kind of dropped the clanger and the transfer request. I immediately thought, what's Cree going to do? But Cree, bless him, he was just like good as gold. But I mean, Nonto's going to be like, I mean, one thing I will say, and this kind of goes, talking about tactics and stuff, I think Nonto's better off the left, coming off the left. That's where we saw him in the Premier League when he made that impact. I think out and out on the right is not the same. I think off the left, Nonto, that's something to get excited about for me.
100%. I'm sure we'll get into potential replacements, but the facts are is that you could argue that we don't need one. Willie Nonto didn't get to play on the left at all last season. It definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, is his best position. He's much better off the left than he is off the right. I think football comes with this. As players, you get close to players or other players, then they move on. Nonto's not going to move to London just to be near Cree Summerville. it don't work like that.
That'd be amazing, wouldn't it? Can you imagine? Please.
It don't work like that. And I think, I've said this before, I think the transfer percentage that we owe to Zurich makes a big part of this situation with Nonto, because from a PSR point of view, we have to make sure that we get what we need to get to make sure it's a viable deal for us in terms of being in terms of being productive. Yeah, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. And so I don't know whether Nonto will go or not. And if he does, he does. And I think we'd replace him. I think we will replace Summerville in some sort of shape or fashion. But I think we've got bags of options, if I'm honest. I really do. We've seen Brendan play there in pre-season. We've seen Nonto play there in pre-season. We've seen Rutter play there in pre-season. And we've seen Dan James play there previously on the left. They can all play there. I quite like Dan James off the left. I prefer him on the right, but I quite like him off the left as well. So I'm not concerned, even if we don't out and out replace him. It's all about where we use that them funds. So,
is there any part of you that, as a Leeds fan, is sick of seeing your best players be sold? I mean, we had a brief mention about this before we went on air, and I don't know about you, but I'm just kind of hardened to it now as a lifelong Leeds fan. I remember the first kind of awareness I had about Leeds United. One of the early, it was after we won the league and we sold Cantona, and never forget my dad turning to me and saying, I can't believe they've sold Cantona to Man United. And I remember that vividly.
Yeah.
And ever since then, basically, it's, you look at kind of, I remember when Hasselbank went, and obviously when we had the O'Leary implosion, we lost all our team, basically. And then all the way through the championship years, Snodgrass House, all these guys went, Rafinha gone, Phillips gone. I mean, it's tricky, isn't it? Because it kills you in a way, doesn't it? Because you just think, you do get attached to these players, especially when you've got superstars on your team. I mean, it is a bit gutting, but I'm just used to it. I am just used to it now.
I think we have to treat it with a bit of a bit of a reality check on the perspective of the situation, because unless you are one of the monster clubs, you are a selling club. That's it. So I would say Man City, Real Madrid, Manchester United, Chelsea. I'd even say everybody else, Newcastle, Liverpool have got PSR issues. Most of the clubs within the Dortmund are a Champions League finalist. Or in and around year in, year out, they're a selling club. So when it then comes to Leeds United and selling off our best talent over the years, my God, it hurts. Yeah, it absolutely hurts. But I can tell you now, it hurts far less selling Archie Gray and Chris Summerville for £70 million combined than it did when we were selling off Johnny Howson for £6 million and Delph to Villa for £6 million in League One. And, this went on and on and on and on and on before Radrizzani came in. So, yeah, it does. But I'm realistic with what happens. If we'd have gone up, there's an argument that we'd have probably still sold a big ticket item anyway. We might have kept hold of them all, but the likelihood is that we probably wouldn't have done because we'd have wanted to build the squad for the Premier League. And maybe then we can command 40 or 50 million from Chelsea for Summerville, because we're not prepared to sell him to a rival in a West Ham for 30 million, and that'd be their ticket price. But we would be prepared to sell him to Chelsea for 50 million. Because that's the way football works. What Chelsea will do now, as an example, is they'll let him go to West Ham for 30 million, and then they'll be okay with paying 60 million for him in 2 years, because that's the way that the top operates. So, yeah, it's annoying, mate, but it's not as bad as it used to be. And like I say, most clubs are selling clubs. Look at what happened to Coventry, as an example, last season. And they're not a huge club, but they finished runners-up in the playoffs, exactly the same as us, and lost Gyökeres and Hamer. Like that. Yeah. Both gone. It's just the way that the land works in football. So, yeah, but I remember when obviously I'm a few years younger than you, but my first kind of memories were signing Fowler. I remember signing Fowler and Ferdinand, but then I vividly remember the implosion and the likes of Danny Mills going like Harry Kewell leaving for like 5 million, and I was sort of Bowyer leaving for next to nothing to West Ham. These painful transfers.
Can't worse than that, can you? It's not losing 1 or 2; it was losing 15. It was absolutely. I
vividly remember, and some fans that are listening on might remember this, but I vividly remember the first game of the season that we got relegated. We played Newcastle. I think it was at Ellen Road. I think it was a 1-1 draw. It was definitely a 1-1 draw. And Lamine Sacco scored. We'd got him on loan. Bandana and dreads. Some of you'll remember him. Yeah. And we thought we'd signed an absolute wonder boy. We thought we'd signed a Harry Kewell replacement. It was unbelievable that day. And they scored really late on and equalised. I think it was Shearer scored really late on. Yeah. We drew 1-1. I vividly remember it. But the team that started out that day, we had like Didier Dome, Zamana Camara played at centre-back. Rocky Jr. signed on loan later. He didn't start the season, but he did come in later. I remember him scoring against Manchester United in the Cup when we got knocked out. I remember that season so vividly. The season that Paul Robinson scored against Swindon, the header. So awful season.
All painful stuff, isn't it? Being a Leeds fan, absolutely. Yeah, as Ryan says here, out of the entire football pyramid, there are only half a dozen clubs who are selling.
Exactly.
Indeed. Now, kind of one thing just that I wanted to bring up on the back of a comment here. Let's have a look. Where's it gone? I should have favorited this one. Here we go. Okay. Phantom Jack, thanks for your comment. Struggle keeping Nonto now. His best buddy is out the door. Farke's style seems to be keep possession and get the ball to certain players to make something happen. What happens next tactically with this? Because I think I was watching the Square Ball and they had what's his name from not the top 20 podcast, Ali something. His name is, can't remember. God, that's terrible. Totally flitting. It's been a long day. But he was basically saying that his kind of main concern for Leeds, almost in a sense, and if you're being super picky, is that kind of lack of tactical inventiveness from Farke, and the fact that we saw quite a few times where he just pile forwards on, and like the playoff final, we had no structure by the end of the game. It was literally just every winger and forward on. And, we've seen some changes in pre-season. We've seen maybe a little bit more of a direct style abounding, but yeah, I mean, he's got to kind of find a way now, hasn't he? I mean, when you lose someone like Summerville, we can't replace him. We're not going to get someone of that level, obviously. But where do you expect him to go? Do you share these concerns about Farke? Because I look at what Kieran McKenna did at Ipswich, and it was like a a manager, a coach who is coaching way above his level. It's like Bielsa, you know what Bielsa did at Leeds. It's coming in and coaching the best out of the players and doing that.
And this, Ali, his point on square ball was like, Farke's always kind of done what is expected of the players that he's got and not really taking them above. I mean, how do you see it going this season? I mean, what would you kind of say to that? Is that fair? Is that harsh, do you think?
I don't think that's fair. Fair. I think it's really easy to just say after the fact, the manager's done well with what he's got, but without them looking at the development of certain, you know, like there'd have been certain managers that wouldn't have even touched Archie Gray this season in the first team. They would have been. They absolutely would have been. Let alone not playing him at right back when we needed somebody to fill in. You know, the development of Jimmy Firpo, the development of Chris Summerville, you know, amongst several others. And I don't think it's fair to just go, oh, well, yeah, the player's great, so he should be doing that. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, this isn't a Bielsa where Bielsa's turned water into wine. Like, what Bielsa did, you can fully kind of apply to him in the Championship with that team because we know how bad that team was before he got there. Now, there is a certain element that these players are top players and he should do well, but I still think the manager deserves the credit for them bringing some of that out of him, out of them. That said, I do think he's tactically found wanting at times. I do think he's very stubborn. I think there is managers that got the better of him last season. We've seen it several times with Russell Martin. I don't think there were much in them teams going into them games, into them 3 games. And I think every time we were fully exposed. I think you can give him probably the Ellen Road game aside because I think that was a bit of a one-off with what was going on off, you know, at Huddersfield, and we knew we weren't really going to go up and all the rest of it. But the other 2 games were both big games, and both times he got really found out. That said, I do think we have seen a change in pre-season. I think vertically how we're moving the ball, we're going through the lines much quicker, more often. I think the signings have built into that. You know, the pass from Rothwell to Bogle as an example, we didn't see that. We didn't see that at all last season. I think I was very much against just throwing Matteo Joseph in at the pivotal time of the season last season. I still think I was right to feel like that. I understand people's opinions being different. But now we're seeing what it's like to have a proper predatory number 9 in them positions. Imagine the amount of goals that we would have scored last season if we'd have had Joseph fully ready or another striker in that position. You know, the goal that he scores the other day where it comes across and it takes a deflection off the defender and Joseph manages to adjust himself and power in a diving header. Bamford can't do that.
No.
Pirro probably can, but Bamford certainly can't. So, you know, we score another 10, 15 goals last season, really, if we convert the chances that we should. Gio Rutter and the amount of... I think he missed something like 12 big chances last season. He was way behind his XG. He's looking a little bit more prominent and getting his shots on target during pre-season. So I've made this point a couple of weeks ago that nobody's taken into consideration the increase of the players that we've already got, the progression of the players that are still here. Ampadu, you know, Firpo again, Dan James, Joseph, even a Pirro, you know, who had an average season last season. You'd want more from him. And that runs through the whole squad. You know, Meslier to be better. If Meslier were just 10% better this season than he was last season, we'd probably be another 6 points better off. I think that'd probably be fair. So we're ignoring all that because we ain't got loads of shiny new toys. I think Brendan Aronson makes a massive difference to the way that Daniel Farke will play, and gives us different options. When we're looking at the bench now, we've got real things to change, real players to change the game. So I think there's problems with Daniel Farke, and I'm still going to say this when we get to the Premier League. It's a different question. But Daniel Farke in his 3 full seasons at Championship level has finished with 90 points or above in every single one of them. So you can't knock him.
Yeah, it's hard to be critical of that, isn't it? Yeah. Ryan here said, I don't think Farke had confidence in his bench last season and his only alternative was to throw the kitchen sink at teams. He's shown more alternatives through pre-season than he did all last season. The
full-backs are massive. The fullbacks are massive. Firpo, we saw what we could get out of him last season, and the build-up playing and amongst that with Summerville was fantastic. I'd argue Firpo, if the player of the season trophy was from January to the end of the season for Leeds, I'd argue that Firpo was it. I would argue he was our best player from January onwards. And I weren't a fan. I weren't a fan at all before. No bias comes from me. I say it as I see it. And now I think we've got that on the other side. I'm really excited by Jayden Bogle. I think he's a top signing. I think he's the best right back in the division, certainly going forward.
Yeah. I think the signs are very promising out there. In terms of, so we've got this Summerville cash now. As you've described there, lots of options. Maybe you don't need an actual replacement if you're thinking about switching onto over or whatever. I guess what Leeds need to not get suckered into, and perhaps this happened, although I still think they had a good window last season. It was very desperate, lastminute.com stuff. Pirro, was that the right signing, really? You look at getting Jadon Anthony as part of a kind of, Sinistera, and we wanted something back for Sinistera. It didn't seem like Farke was ever fully convinced on that one. Without, before we get into specifics of certain players, what do they need to do with that money? Obviously Farke, I still think he wants a central midfielder, possibly some cover at left back as well. But what do you want to see that done with that money, basically?
Just on that as well, Browney, I would argue that it's worth £5 million less in the fee to have that deal done today than it would be to get £5 million more and do it on deadline day.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, fans would kick and scream if we sold him for £5 million more than whatever we do get in 4 weeks' time, over potentially doing it today with a month to then go and sign a proper replacement or spend that money effectively elsewhere. So, I just wanted to make that point. But I think, if you're looking at the left wing or left midfield position, because we've spoke about this quite a lot, and we're about the 10s or the inverted 10s, or, playing 3 10s, or do we have 2 out-and-out wingers, or however you kind of want to put it. I think if you think of that left attacking midfield role now, we do have 4 options there in Dan James, Brendan Aronson, Gio Rutter, and Will Gnonto. Yeah, they can all play there. So really, do we need a replacement? I would argue that we probably don't. And I would think that if we're going to get one of the ones that we really want, Jack Clark, Morgan Whittaker. I saw somebody mention Morgan Whittaker earlier. I'm not a fan of him. I really, really don't like him. I must have seen Morgan. Not that I really don't like him. That's harsh. But I'd seen him maybe 7 or 8 times last season. Leeds played them 4 times. I was never impressed with him. Outside of the first few months of the season, he really struggled to deliver numbers at the Championship. His values dropped dramatically because I know he was linked with Lazio, I think it was, in January, and that ended up not going on. And now he's being talked about as a sideways move in the Championship. It's not one that particularly enthuses me. I thought it was very much for himself. I thought it was very, very hot and cold with his output. Anyway, I know you said we won't get into it.
No, it's fine. No, we can kind of moves on to it. Yeah.
So, but I would argue that we would be better place putting the money into an out-and-out 10 that can really compete for that 10 position, because I still feel like we're kind of shoehorning one of the options in there, either Rutter, Pirro, or Brendan Aronson. I feel like they're all a little bit shoehorned into that position. I feel like the door will be better wide, and Gio's probably going to be better this season after a season playing in that position, so maybe he's the option, but I'd like to see him on the right, if I'm honest. I would love to see us sign Gabriel Sara, but it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. A lot of Leeds fans are getting all over it, saying it's one that's potential. I've seen a report earlier say that we're putting a £6 million bid. Norwich paid 10 million for him 4 years ago. They're not going to sell him for £6 million to a Championship rival. It's just not going to happen. Apparently, that team from Turkey have had a bid of £17 million rejected from him. He ain't coming to Leeds. He isn't coming to Leeds. I think it'd be a fantastic sign. I think it's a great play. It's exactly what I think would elevate that midfield on and give proper competition to Rothwell. Because I think from what I've seen of Rothwell, I would argue he's our best centre midfielder at progressing the ball right now. I think he's our best attacking central midfielder. So we are short in that position. I know a lot of people are campaigning for a left back. I'm not sure. that we need one. If Firpo is fit for the season, which he's been fit for a sustained period of time now, he's had a full pre-season, openly said it's the first time he's ever had a full pre-season, which I think is great. We then have Verba as backup to that position, who's going to be competing for a centre back position out and out. So he could play a lot of the season there if Firpo was injured. And then we have Byram as a third option. So I don't see why we would need a left back, if I'm honest. It'd be nice to have one just sat there ready. And Harrison Burrows, who would have probably come on and competed with Firpo for an out-and-out starting spot, would have been great for £3 million. But I think outside of that, I just don't think it makes a lot of sense to go and spend the money there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's because I mean the 49ers have said, look, we're going to reinvest. Whatever we get is going to be reinvested. Look, we don't know what the accounts are like and what it's actually looking like at PSR level. I think this is why the journalists are struggling so much to kind of get a handle on Leeds' kind of situation, is because it's played really tightly closed chest, isn't it? Really. I mean, there's probably there's going to be a decent amount of money to do something, but again, like you say, I mean, if you get another left back and Firpo stays fit, it does get a little bit tricky, doesn't it? I mean, maybe the loan market, Jason. I mean, is that possibly something we're going to probably look to exploit a little bit more?
The thing that we have to take into account, Browney, is that this squad is stacked. It is actually stacked. Like, we want to kind of make out that we've got no options, and people are still harking on that we've sold like 13 players. We've sold 3. I'm going to include Cree in this. We've sold 3 first-team players as it stands. And we've signed, I'm not going to include Cairns, we've signed 4. So the squad is actually bloated because we've now had DeBio go in there as another option at centre-back. We've had Charlie Cruz step up and give us a backup option for centre midfield. We've had Brendan Aronson and Max Verba come back in, and again, we have to just assume that they're going to be here right now because that's what we've been told. They are both first 11 players, yet they're going to struggle to start. Do you get me? Yeah, they both are good enough to start out and out, week in, week out in the Championship for a team that wins a division, and they're both going to struggle to get a spot in the team against Portsmouth. That's the reality. They're going to go onto our bench more than likely. So, and then you have the progression and the step up of Mateo Joseph. And I've seen somebody mention Joseph a little bit further up. I know you're going to come to the comment at some point. He, by the looks of it, is going to be our main man at 9. So then you're in a situation there where you've either got Pirro on the bench, Bamford on the bench, or both of them on the bench. Because they could both be on the bench if Brendan, Nonto and Rutter start, and James. Where do you fit him in? Like, you can't. How many players do you want? You know what I mean? So I am okay with us investing properly if it means, because I think this squad is absolutely good enough to win this league. I think it's a failure from Daniel Farker if he doesn't. So would it be better and sounder long term that we take all this money that we've generated and then have a proper war chest for the Premier League when we can properly spend it, because PSR would be in our favour then, not the Championship income, it'd be Premier League income. So, I think when you properly look at this team, how many more signings can you get in there before you're pissing players off because they're not playing?
Yeah, absolutely. Bit of scouting here from Slide 2.0. Sign Joel Fujita leading the Japanese Olympic team. High motor for press, and it will be good business by attracting the Japanese fans.
We've been there before. We've done this before. We signed. What was his name now?
What was his name?
Is it Celtic?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, I remember. Did he play a game? Did he actually?
He played in pre-season. He never played for the first team. I can picture him. I can picture him.
That. He used to happen a lot, didn't it? The Brazilian kid with blonde hair and all that. What was it? I can't remember his name either. But
they had Nakata, didn't they?
Yeah. But we always signed it. Hidiguchi. There we go.
Hidiguchi. That's it. Yeah, that's the one.
Boom. Are you still expecting automatic promotion for Leeds this season? Are you still? And there we go. Put Ryan spot on it, Adrian. Are you kind of
100%, Browney? 100%. There is no excuse for this team not going up. No excuse. And don't get me wrong, there's going to be competition. I think Luton, as I've said before, will be right up there. Burnley could be. Parker always gets his teams that are stacked in and around it, but I'm not scared by him as such. I think a top manager would course the league or course the top 2 with that team. I think Burnley are pretty stacked. Imagine Kieran McKenna as an example was their manager. I think that they'd fly it. But that side, this is not a strong championship. I would imagine that there'll be a surprise package of some sort, whether that be a West Brom or someone like that. But West Brom are another season further into their problems. They've just sold Townsend, their left back, to Ipswich for 800 grand. Like, this is the competition that we're dealing with. So really, we should just have far too much. As I keep saying, another year of progression for some of these boys. Ethan Ampadu a year better, Dan James a year better, Rodon a year better and signing permanently, Bogle. This team is ridiculous, really. It is, honestly, it's ridiculous. So there's no excuse. I mean, if after 10 games, this team's not comfortably in the top 2, I'd be looking at Farker. If it was outside the top 6, I'd be saying you bullet him after 10. I would. I would. I know that's drastic. It's drastic, but I would. I'd be saying, I'm really sorry, Daniel, you're not the man. It's time to give somebody else a go at this because, I mean, I can get on board with the excuses for last season. I can. And I think, Ipswich were in an anomaly and, the start of the season and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. He did have a lot to contend with. He ain't got any of that this time. He ain't got any of it, mate. No. So, it needs to be a runaway job. I don't care if we win the league or not. I've always said that when it comes to getting promoted. But we need to be comfortable. 3 or 4 games to go, it's done. It's boxed off. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's got to be right in the thick of it from the off, hasn't it? And I mean, that was the frustrating thing last year, wasn't it? Playing catch up for 30 games or something, wasn't it? It was just obscene. Going back to
it was understandable. It was at the beginning of last season. It was understandable, and the run that we had post Christmas was unbelievable. And again, he deserves a lot of credit for that. And he got us winning games. We were very systematic. You can deal with it not being that entertaining if it's bringing the results. I think we need to be a little bit nicer on the eye this season. But again, it doesn't really matter that much if we're winning games.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, someone like Farker as well, do you think they're able to change? I mean, do managers change? Are they capable of, or do they kind of, get stuck in the ways, stubborn? I mean, is he kind of capable of maybe having a plan B, do you think?
I think managers are capable of changing slight things within their structure. I don't think most are that capable of changing or making wholesale changes. I think there is this kind of notion within management that you get better at what you've always done. Yeah. I think the very top managers are like that too. Pep Guardiola has always been exactly the same. He's just developed on the same system. Bielsa, who we all love and adore, is exactly the same. So I get it. I would argue that most managers in and around Daniel Farker's level will probably always be similar. And some of it is then just luck and the players that then deals with the rest. Recruitment's massive. Recruitment is absolutely huge. That's why you can see, and I know he's a fan of the channel, is Mr. Mark Hughes, right? But Mark Hughes is a great example of it, because how can a manager go from what he achieved at Man City, Blackburn, to then end up managing in League Two no more than a decade later? You know what I mean? It's an interesting one, and how what is the development, or do they just stay here and everybody else goes past them? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you look on the biggest stage, you look at like someone like Ancelotti, who, his teams don't really have a distinctive style of play. I mean, a lot of their knockout games in the Champions League, they were on the back foot, and their XG was lower than their opponent, and but his ability to manage those players, that's what seems to be the key thing, isn't it?
Ancelotti is well known for being a man manager. Tactically, he's not all that. No. He's man management. It's about putting them players out. and dealing with the egos, putting them players out on the pitch, ready to die for the shirt, and all the rest of it that comes with that. I think Mourinho's similar to that. I think Ferguson was similar to that, if I'm honest with you. I don't think Ferguson was particularly tactically astute. He had a difficult game and he chucked Darren Fletcher in, or he chucked Park Ji-sung in, didn't he? And that was his answer. That was his answer. Workhorse in there, get in there. That's not, scoffing at some brilliant management, but I actually think most team sports, it's about what you do with the people rather than the tactics. As long as you tactically sound enough, if you can get the players bought into each other and giving that little bit more, I think that's a massive part of it. Massive.
Yeah, that's what can happen. So I mean, we're 9 days away from the Portsmouth game and the opening game of the season, which is it seems to come around faster and faster, doesn't it? Every year we've got another friendly at the weekend against Valencia, which might be a step up in terms of what we face over pre-season. I don't know about Valencia at the moment. Actually, I don't know if they're what they're doing.
I'm not sure myself, to be honest. It's not a league I tend to look too much at. I do remember playing Valencia the year that we got relegated from the Premier League. Do you remember that? Simon Walton made his debut. At like 15, 16. And got sent off. He got sent off. He scored a penalty and then got sent off in a pre-season friendly at 16. But
crazy.
It'll be interesting. It's going to be a test. They're a top-level team. It's probably similar to playing a West Ham.
Do you think he plays the 11? Do you think he starts with the 11 that will start the week after?
Yeah, I think you'll get a pretty strong indication of what the team will be. I don't think it'll be 245s. I think it'll be a starting 11 and then 30 minutes for the bench or something like that to give a few game time. It'll be a good watch, I think. I think it'll be a good watch. I imagine Ellen Road will probably be sold out. I would imagine.
Yeah, my father-in-law's managed to get. He's bought me and my boy a ticket, so I will be one of those in attendance. Excellent. So yeah, I mean, for me, Joseph, he's got to start now, hasn't he? As the striker, would you say, Jay? I mean, if you're picking anyone to start that role, I mean, I've got to admit, if it's Pirro again, I'm a little bit concerned. Unless the tactical tweak has kind of, unlocked something. Bloody Joseph.
I think the fan base would have an absolute meltdown if Joseph didn't start. I think he deserves it now. He deserves it. And I do think that Joseph would have been closer to starting last season had he not had that bad injury at the beginning of last season. He was in and around the squad and then he got an injury and he went out for like 3 months and we never saw him. But he looks different. His physical presence is just ridiculous.
That goal that you said, where he kind of twists his body and heads it, it's like, wow.
That's a real skill, that's a proper...
for a while.
That's a predatory striker finish, that. I mean, I would say a Becchio, McCormack, Beckford kind of finish. Instinctively just boom onto it, moves his body in that way to be able to do that. I can already imagine watching Bamford do that and it had a bit of in chest and gone over bar. Like that. That's what would have happened. So yeah, I think he's got to start, mate. I'm excited by him starting as well. His ability to run off the back line, his strength, he's good at bringing in play. He's full of energy as well. Like the other day in pre-season, he was back defending. He can do that pressing forward role that most love to go with now. He can finish on both feet. Yeah, he's ready. He's ready. Yeah. He needs to play there. Yeah,
like Ryan says, there's been a bit of kind of propaganda around him, hasn't there, with the club
even
as well.
Number 19 too. I think that is something, he was very clearly he picked that for a reason. Pablo Hernandez's number on it. I think Rodrigo took it the season after. So yeah, I think I definitely feel that.
Yeah. Gary, if Joseph is our number 9, he'll bag 20 to 25 goals. I could see something like that happening, as long as he kind of gets off to a good start. Hopefully it'll happen for him. Sly, if certain players like Nonto don't start, do you think it means they will be sold? That'll be interesting, won't it, that, Jay, to see who doesn't quite make the cut, I guess, at the weekend, see if it kind of indicates anything.
You can only play 11 players, can't you, at the end of the day, and there's no guarantee that Nonto starts in this side, as much as people can make the argument that he should or he shouldn't or whatever. I think he's looked good in pre-season, mainly off the left. But I wouldn't be surprised if we started Aronson, Pirro, Rutter. I wouldn't be surprised. Rutter in the 10 and James out on the right. I wouldn't be surprised to see that either. But he's had a bit of an injury during pre-season, so maybe not. Dan James, that is. So, but there's plenty of options there. But he'll get his opportunity. Daniel Farke likes Willian Onto. He likes Willian Onto a lot. So I would imagine that if there's the opportunity to, if he doesn't start, he will take his opportunity at some point and then earn a position back in the starting 11.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, God, I can't believe it's going to be a week away. Yeah, please do smash a like on the video if you've not already. Get your comments in and everything. Jason, anything else you would like to cover off, my friend, before we vanish?
Probably just replacements for Summerville. I mean, I suppose it's
Who's on your kind of radar then? Who would you? What's kind of your thinking with this?
There's just so many names getting floated about it. I mean, I really like Jack Clark as a potential solution, and I think it'd be doable for 15 million. So we'd still take nice profit out of the Summerville situation. I think he's English. He's a Leeds lad. I think there'd be a lot to like about that deal. I think he's a very, very good player at this level. I think he's done extremely well to build himself back up after a few setbacks. And I think he's on that verge now of potentially somebody taking a chance at him at Premier League level. So I think that'd be a really good timing. I wouldn't be against Raksaki coming in on loan. I mean, if I could make that as a permanent, I'd be absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, tell us about him then. What's the deal with him then?
He played 40 odd games at Charlton last season. 15 goals, I think 11 assists, something like that. Very diminutive, very quick. Can play on either side. Crystal Palace, I think a lot of him was meant to get some game time last season, but then didn't under Hodgson. I think Hodgson were under pressure straight away, and he didn't really trust him. Plus, he had some good players ahead of him, Michael Elise and the likes. Southampton apparently have had a £15 million bid turned down for him. Palace are of the opinion that they don't want to sell him to a direct rival, but they'd be happy loaning him out to the Championship. That's what I'm hearing. But you're going to have to guarantee him game time. Now, where does that sit in then? As I've said, we've got 4 options. So can we make that one happen? Is he going to start week in, week out? It's a tough one because you don't want to end up in a Jadon Anthony situation again, do you? So, yeah, tough one. I'd love to see Raksaki come in, especially if it's a permanent. That'd be a monster signing. If we signed him permanently as a replacement long-term for Summerville, look, come in, you're going to start 20 games this season. You're going to be on the bench at least every week. You're going to be coming on, most games. That position is your own long-term. So maybe within a season, you're going to be the main man out on that left-hand side. Look at what's happened to Cree. Look at the options that Willian Onto's got, so on and so on, and sell that project to him. I think that'd be an unbelievable signing. But it doesn't make sense that Crystal Palace would sell him to us if they're not going to sell him to Southampton, because in 12 months' time, we might be a direct rival for Crystal Palace as well. So, I can imagine a loan there. But I really feel like Jack Clark might be one that we can get done. Just depends on whether we'd want to spend that amount of money in one go. It could be that we then look at a solution in the centre midfield and spend 6, 7, 8 million pound on an 8 and not replace Summerville and go with what we've got. Because we definitely
think that midfield is light. Would you look at the midfield numbers and think, that's the area where it definitely feels a bit light?
If Rothwell gets injured, and I've really liked what I've liked from Rothwell during pre-season. I think he's shown way more than probably what most thought. I know Chris was scoffing at it, wasn't he, in our streams. He was totally underwhelmed with that. I liked him as a squad player. I think it makes a lot of sense, but it's looking like he's probably going to be the main man at the moment in that midfield kind of progression role. I'm not comfortable with that, if I'm honest. I'm not. So I would like us to sign an out-and-out number 8. I think of Gus. I'm not saying Gus Hamer, but Gus Hamer would be, if I could pick anybody that would be even slightly realistic, he'd be the man, or a Gabriel Sara, but I think Sara's price point would be out of reach. So, I would like us to body in there, because if Rothwell gets injured, what do? We go Gruev and Kamara, Gruev and Ampadu. Gruev and Ampadu. and then you're having 2 DMs basically playing in there, and you're asking Brendan Aronson to maybe drop in, or Rutter to come deeper, or Pirro starts doing his Harry Kane thing, and you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's what we want to avoid. We really want to avoid the square pegs in round holes, don't we? I think that's what Leeds United as a club have to get away away from, because we've always kind of been hindered by this. I mean, you know, the one that drove me mad was the Jesse Marsh first full season. We had 3 right backs on the book and basically no left backs, because I think Firpo was out and Struijk was starting at left back. But you're just like, why would you build such an imbalanced squad? It doesn't make sense. Can we please stop doing this? You know, it'd be nice. You know, it's like Rutter, you know, had a fantastic season last year, but don't feel like a proper number 10.
Yeah.
It's Pirro, not proper. You know, let's get proper players in the proper positions, please.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I mean, the facts are is that you can't recruit 3 first-team players for every single position. No. You do have to have some players that can fill in different positions, like we did with Ampadu last season. And, you know, like, there has to be a bit of that, especially at the Championship. But you're absolutely spot on in that you can't go into the start of the season with Pascal Struijk at left-back. I mean, it looked so bad. And every week he got more and more... less and less confident, more and more unconfident, and it just looked worse and worse and worse and worse. Yeah. I agree with you completely. I think you have to have a squad that can deal with all eventualities, and that is why there's nothing wrong with signing a Sam Byram. Yeah, like people were grilling him, or, you know, and we've got others within the squad that can do different positions. I think Brendan Aronson's a good example of that. I think Rothwell's a good example of that. He can play a little bit further up, a little bit further back. Gruev can fill in different positions. You know, Verba. I think Verba, because Verba might leave. Yeah, I'm not fully convinced that he ends up staying. No. I think someone will probably pay 15 million quid for him. But he's a great option to have. I mean, there's an argument that he starts. He starts in every other Championship team, every single other Championship team. We just got this situation where we've got 3 first choice top end Championship centre backs. Yeah. I think he's a better player than Pascal Struijk. I know a lot of Leeds fans are going to be like going ballistic at me saying that. I do think that is the case. I think Pascal can just, his concentration levels at times.
Yes,
just
he's got a mistake in him, hasn't he? He has got a blunder.
Switches off. Yeah. I think Verba's just a little bit better all round, if I'm honest. But I understand why he won't start. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's not gone well in even game 1. Verba's in. I really wouldn't be surprised at all. So I can't even remember how we got to this point. But yeah, the positions within the squad. Yeah, Verba can play left back. That's how where we're going with it. You know. So yeah, you're spot on, mate. But the team is stacked with options.
Yeah.
Sly's just said there, what's Jason's current starting 11? So I'll give you it very quickly. I think I'm going to give, because I would play 3 at the back. I would go 5-3-2 or some version of that. But I don't think Daniel Farke now will, based on what we've seen in pre-season. We saw it at Harrogate. I thought it was great. I would start with Verba, Struijk and Rodon. But I don't think we're going to do that. So I'm going to give you what I think Daniel Farke will do. So I think it'll be Meslier, obviously, Bogle, Rodon, Struijk, and Firpo. I think it'll then be Ampadu and Rothwell in the midfield. I think that'll be the start. I think Gruev will be on the bench. I then think it'll be Rutter, Aronson, Nonto, and Joseph up front. That's what I think. Or Nonto and Aronson the other way around. One or the other. Aronson might start on the left and Nonto in the 10. I think it'll be a configuration of them 3 anyway. Rutter might even start centrally, and Aronson might go out to the right. You can do anything.
It's tough, isn't it? I genuinely, I couldn't call it, to be honest. I really couldn't call it. Because, I mean, you know, you can imagine 3 at the back. I mean, Verba, Struijk and Rodon, you've literally got everything you need out of a central defence, haven't you? There, you've got legs, you've got, you know, tenacity, you've got everything, haven't you, really? Hopefully it's going to be something that we see where we can switch between, though. You know, hopefully that's going to be a side to our game where we've got the 3-5-2 in his pocket where we can put that out.
it's going to be interesting with Ampadu
then and Gruev, and it's gonna be absolutely fascinating to see. Really, it's super interesting. But it does make the squad is stacked. When you go through this, it's like
it's absolutely stacked. I think if Dan James had have been fit all pre-season, I think he'd have started on the right, and I think he'd have probably kept Rutter in the 10 with the options that we've got, and then it'd have been either Aronson or Nonto on the left. But go through that bench. I mean, you're gonna have James, Pirot, Bamford. You're going to have Gruev on the bench, all players that can change games or control games or do different things within the game. You're going to have Byram on the bench as an option for all that back line. You're going to have Verber on the bench. I mean, my word, Jesus Christ. Like, you literally are going to be stacked. Yeah. Absolutely stacked. Ryan's just put Joffrey there as well. Joffrey on the bench, and he's had a fairly good pre-season. I'm guessing there's probably a couple that are missing as well. I mean, Charlie Crew, who we've not even mentioned, who I would argue, is probably ahead of name slips my mind. The lad that's gone to Plymouth, centre midfielder, Darko Jaby. He's ahead of Darko Jaby in terms of playing first team minutes for Leeds United. Darko Jaby is going to play out and out games every week in the Championship this season. And we've got Charlie Crew that might not even make the squad. So I just think we're so stacked.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? One thing I just wanted to say actually before we do wrap up is that kind of recruitment, because Matteo Joseph was an auto signing as well, wasn't he? He was an auto one, and I think, as much as the auto thing gets kind of panned, I do like this idea of like signing these kind of mercurial foreign players very young who develop into kind of these kind of gems. Recruitment's fascinating, isn't it? Really, what you can do and how you do it, and the demographic and everything. I do think Struijk as well. I mean, Struijk was similar. Those kind of players that they picked up from top European teams, plucked them. I know there was a few that didn't work. Probably more the British ones actually that haven't worked out as well as we thought.
Browney, most transfers don't work out. Most transfers, or not most, but more than you think, end up being unsuccessful. I don't think anybody ever had a problem with Orta's transfer strategy when it came to the younger ones. I think the problem with Orta's strategy was the first team signings, because you still need to make first team signings that are ready to improve your squad now. Rasmus Christensen, Mark Rocker, as good as the player Mark Rocker is, he didn't fit the system. Why did we sign him? I would argue Tyler Adams. I would argue, Sinisterra and his injury record. Sinistera's fit that season, we probably stay up. And this kind of ran through the first team squad. Rodrigo, I would argue, would be in that kettle of fish as well. And I loved Rodrigo, but he never fit Bielsa's system. We were playing him as an 8. And these were Premier League signings. If you take out Rafinha, I would argue that every other Premier League signing was a bit of a flop. Llorente, Christensen, obviously. I mean, you could go on and on and on. That first season, Robin Koch, another one. And it goes on and on and on. Pretty much every first team signing that he made in the Premier League was a flop.
Yeah.
The signings that he made as in the youngsters, I would even argue the worst of them were still successful. So, like signing Sam Greenwood as an example from Arsenal, and then selling him on for £2 million, or loan fees to Middlesbrough last season, and then again, that's a success. That's not a bad thing, because he still made a part as a backup role in our squad previously under Bielsa, and Jesse Marsh, Joe Gellart, £1 million. That's not an unsuccessful transfer, what we've had out of Gellart, even though it might not have reached the potential. You go on, Chris Summerville, Pascal Struijk, and we have got others that have gone on to be successful. So I don't think anybody ever really had a problem with Orta's dealings with the youngsters. It was always the first team. Matteo Joseph's a great example, and we have had others too. So
yeah. Well, this is it, because you kind of, with recruitment as well, you want a bit of that inventiveness with it, don't you? As well, you don't kind of want bog standard kind of, because it don't work that way, does it? You need it, absolutely. You need it.
Melia as well.
Melia as well. Yeah.
You're absolutely spot on, because otherwise you end up with signings like Paul Green and Michael Tong and Michael Brown, and you end up just recycling them Championship players that just leave you 10th.
Well, you see certain clubs, like it's also got like almost like Sheffield United, isn't it? It sees it's like, right, just grab grab whoever they can, and you know, keep them all right. Okay, Shackleton, and you know, it kind of feels that way, doesn't it?
It feels like you've taken over as one of them clubs on Football Manager where you're in a bit of a financial ruin and you just look through all the like transfer listed or open free contracts. Yeah, you just filter anybody out that costs anything. You filter them out and just sign anybody that you know has done it in the Championship before. I think Sheffield United are a really interesting one this season because I can see Wilder either doing really, really well or being out of the job within 6 weeks. I can just see it. I think it'll be the latter. I think they'll really struggle this season.
Yeah, indeed. Well, it's only a week away now, so not long to go until we find out what's happening there. Well, thank you everyone who's joined us this evening as well. If you're watching this again later, do let us know what you think about what we've chatted tonight on tonight's show about. Subscribe to the channel as well.
I do look at the comments from time to time as well. So, like, if you put a good comment under the video, like after the fact, not in the live chat, I sometimes do respond to them, usually when they're having a go at me. But yeah, drop a comment in and I'll have a look.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, bad or good, get them in there. Let's see what you're thinking. But yeah, thank you everyone for who's actually watched along live as well. We really do appreciate it. Cheers, Ryan. We will be back on Monday for the roundtable show. There's various people on holiday at the moment as well, so I don't know if it'll be a full panel. We'll wait and see. But myself and Jason, we will be back next week for another Leeds United catch-up ahead of the brand new season. Can you believe it?
That's exciting, right?
I know, yeah, I can't believe it. I'm ready for it, though. I'm ready now. I'm ready. I am ready for it now. I'm ready to get hurt again. Yeah. Bring it on.
Can't wait.
Yeah. As long as it doesn't end in a Wembley visit again, please.
Yeah. We're not going.
We're not going. Yeah. We won't even bother this time. Definitely not. Good stuff. All right. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Stephen Brown alongside who's been Jason Booker. Jason, thank you very much, mate.
Thank you, mate.
And we will see you again next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.